Jim Ryan, we hardly knew ye. This is VGC, a video game podcast with me, Jordan Midler, Chris Dring, and Andy Robinson. Folks, it's been a very busy, random Thursday. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, we ran a big event yesterday, and it was the GamesIndustry.biz HR Summit, which is as exciting as it sounds. Actually, no, it was quite exciting. It was quite cool. We had our Best Place to Work awards as well. I hosted it, so I'm feeling quite tired, but happy.
Yeah. Well, you being back here, you've once again become top of the league in terms of guests on this podcast, surpassing Ethan Lawrence. So the title race is on.
Is that my nemesis?
Yeah, pretty much. Andy, how are you?
Yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, writing about some video games this week,
right now,
which is nice.
Games?
Yeah,
ridiculous.
That was nice. Yeah, been writing about my Alan Wake trip. Which I went to recently, which was very, very old school. Felt like I was, it was really, kind of pleasing to see dozens of people comment like, "Oh, this is like an old school magazine feature."
Yeah,
because that's what it felt like. It felt like an old school event where you got to interview the whole cast and all the development team and play 4 hours, and then it's like, right, what am I going to do with my 18 pages? With this, but at the same time it was a bit depressing because it was like, well, is this significant now? I've just written a preview about a game and it's like, wow, this is like a magazine piece. That's just what previews are, aren't they?
Yeah. Although, I mean, to be fair, that's what I thought as well when I was reading it, especially with like the little inserts of like,
it's just because I put
answers.
Some crossheads on.
Yeah, pretty much. But we'll talk about Alan Wake 2 later, and some of that footage you sent, which was some of the goriest stuff that I really wasn't expecting. But it has been a very big week. Starting with story number 1, PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan is stepping down. This was confirmed last night in quote, Sony Interactive Entertainment today announced that SIE President and CEO Jim Ryan has made the decision to retire in March 2024 after almost 30 years with the PlayStation business. To support Mr. Ryan in his transition, Sony Group Corporation President, COO and CFO Hiroki Totoki will assume the role of Chairman of SIE effective October 2023 and effective April 1st, 2024. Mr. Totoki will be appointed interim CEO of SIE. Now, before we get into some of the quotes around this, Chris, did this come as a surprise to you?
No, no. I didn't know. PlayStation, Sony. It's not even just PlayStation. It's Sony execs of any leadership. They tend to be about 5, 6 years, 10 years. Jim isn't a young man, and in an interview I did with him a little while ago, short during the pandemic, you could tell that the pandemic was actually a bit of relief because it meant that he didn't have to fly. Well, I mean, it was not good, but he didn't have to fly to the US all the time. I had a chat with him once just before an interview I did where he said he has missed a few birthdays and things as a result of it. So I very much got the impression that he wasn't far away from saying goodbye, and here it is. So no, it didn't surprise me that he's retiring. I was expecting it at some point soon, because Andrew House I think was 6 years. Kaz Hirai went further up management, but he was about 5 years as well. So it's sort of in that sort of ballpark.
Jim cited difficulties juggling his home life in Europe with responsibilities in North America, as you said. Quote, after 30 years, I have made the decision to retire from SIE in March 2024. I've relished the opportunity to have a job, and I love this very special company, working with great people and incredible partners, but I found it increasingly difficult living in Europe and working in North America. I will leave having been privileged to work on products that have touched millions of lives across the world. PlayStation will always be part of my life, etc. and so on. Andy, this was a lovely get out of bed at Thursday and on a Wednesday night situation, but again, a surprising one or natural order.
It's very symbolic of Jim's reign that he made me get out of bed at 11 p.m. for a very US time zone targeted announcement. It is literally only PlayStation that does that as well, by the way. I'm not going to say anything exciting. Exactly what Chris said. If you look at the reigns of the previous presidents and CEOs, he's within that. He doesn't look unusual. He's not a young man. You could almost sense, as Chris kind of alluded to, during his time that it was, wasn't much fun trying to, bridge the Atlantic Ocean all the time with his responsibilities. So no, I'm not surprised, to be honest. He always seemed like a safe pair of hands. He's got the console out. It's doing really well. Nothing's fallen apart. At the same time, nothing particularly original or exciting is going on. But that's clearly not his mandate. Now's probably for someone else to come in and then, kind of hopefully contribute on top of that.
It's interesting with these CEO changes because Andrew House instigated the change where PlayStation was going to become a global entity in the US, right? And then he left, and that became Jim Ryan's thing, and that's his accomplishment in a way. Is he centralized PlayStation, but it was something that started before him. And what he started is this move to live service and mobile, and started talking about that really, and PC, and that sort of movement. But he's not going to see that through either. So he sort of started all that off. Developers are working on it, and now it'll be the next person to come in to see PlayStation transition to that thing, and that's the thing that interests me, because PlayStation's CEOs have always been people that were there at the start. Jim was there at the beginning, as was Andrew House. They were there right at the birth of all of PlayStation. We're going to get that this time? That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, do you know what? That crossed my mind as well, is that I know he's not got a great reputation with a lot of the PlayStation fans. I mean, he loves a gaff and stuff, and obviously he's done some... there have been some unpopular decisions during his reign, closing Japan studio and stuff, which I don't think is specifically tied to him. However, it did cross my mind that, if this guy's unpopular, the guy who comes next is not going to be a 30-year company veteran, almost certainly. It's probably going to be a marketing guy from the US who's going to absolutely double down on everything that personally I find particularly uninteresting about PlayStation. It's going to be more very, very Western, AAA safe games.
Yeah, I don't. It's I
think they're just going to look more and more like Xbox, and I don't mean that. I don't mean that as a negative thing necessarily. I mean, like, some deviation would be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, they used to bring the flair PlayStation. I mean, I'm being the old man again, but they used to, come up with the hugely original stuff, the regional flavour. And the last kind of 10 years, they've just been slowly moving more towards just being the American company.
Yeah, I miss the old... I've had a conversation with Jim with this many times, and it's just the way the industry is now. It's almost impossible to... They view it as sort of they can't continue like that. But the old localised, like you had Europe and Japan and the US, and they all basically did their own thing. And Europe... That's why Invisimals was a thing, and it's the way Japan studios... Because Invisimals was popular in Spain, so Europe going, yeah, we'll keep doing Invisimals. The US didn't care, and Japan didn't care. But now it's all centralised. Those decisions are going, well, no, we're not making a game that's just popular in Spain. And it's and you've got that sort of and I think that's what made it popular in the first place. PlayStation was that regional thing, and I think what they're trying to do is have their cake and eat it, be globalized. But the problem with that is decisions took too long, and this is the point they've often made, is that if a big platform-wide decision needed to be made, you need to get Europe on board, you need to get Japan on board, get US on board, and by moving it all into one, they can go, right, we're going to head in this direction and do it quickly. So I understand why they did it, but I do think they've potentially lost something along the way. But I don't think the strategy will change, because I don't think you can. What are you going to do? I don't think it's like Xbox where they went, right, changing all of management, bring someone else in, and we're going to scrap all those games they were working on. So they're not going to come in and go, right, you 8 studios making live service games, you're not doing it anymore. I don't think that's going to happen. But it's a difficult decision from Sony to decide, who they bring in, because you might want to bring in somebody from the outside who's got live service experience and mobile experience. Some maybe even.
I reckon Rizzatello will be out of a job soon.
Yeah, Phil Harrison's about, isn't he?
What's Don Matrick up to these days? The biggest transfer saga of all time. Chris, is this a good time for him to step away? PlayStation's position seems pretty strong. They've maybe not got a ton of stuff announced that we know of, but surely their lineups are pretty set for the next couple of years. Yeah,
PlayStation don't have much of a. We don't know what their slate's like post Spider-Man really, but when you're this dominant, Star Wars is a PlayStation game, right? And Call of Duty is a PlayStation game, and FIFA is a PlayStation game. They don't necessarily need the exclusives to drive things in the way that perhaps the other platforms do. But it's actually, Ryan's tenure has been hugely successful. Right? That console's grown its market share. If anything, it's they're more profitable than they've ever been. Their game's still getting great reviews. They're doing extremely well. It's an enviable position to have, I think, to be in. So I can't. There's never a good time to leave, particularly in the games industry where everything's changing all the time, I think. But if you're going to leave, now's probably the time to do it, rather than at the end of a platform console generation or the start of a new one.
Andy, do you think that the next leader will be in the Phil Spencer mode of kind of he's your mate, he's a gamer just like you, he's a bit more front facing? That always seemed to be a criticism of Ryan compared to Phil Spencer.
No, I don't see why they would rock the boat if everything's working, to be honest. I don't see what the incentive would be for that.
And is there any like actual, Chris, you might know this, when Jim Ryan would come out and say these things that would go crazy on Twitter, like why would people play old PlayStation games and all the believe in generation stuff, did that have any material backlash in the real world, or was that an exclusively Twitter centralized issue?
I don't think Sony care. I mean, a lot of the times those sort of, and the thing is, contextually, right? You need to think about, cause some of those questions, some of those quotes are things from interviews I did, right? And I would ask the question, and I would go to, and it would trigger an answer. And in the like, we believe in generations is a big thing that people throw around quite a lot, because obviously then they made a load of games accessible to PS4, but that was kind of a retroactive. That was a few issues on that. Was like PS5 didn't because of the pandemic didn't hurt, so they had to sort of course correct. But also, he didn't mean every game was going to be a PS5 exclusive. It was like it was taken a little literally. And I often think sometimes that if you listen to the context of his answer, you think, like when he said, "Oh, why would you play that old Gran Turismo game?" Was his point was about, he was trying to defending backwards compatibility things, but it was. I don't know. I don't think so. Thing is, with my understanding, and obviously I don't speak to everybody at Sony, and I'm sure there are people there that hated his guts, but PlayStation UK used to call him Uncle Jim, right? Andrew House called him his secret weapon, and sort of the secret behind his success and all this kind of stuff. You've got Shahid, who's used to be the head of indies at PlayStation Europe. He's just done a little tweet about it. He actually did a keynote talk back in April calling Jim Ryan his hero and his inspirational leader and all this kind of stuff. Like, he was well liked internally, at least from the people that I know. So I don't think it was. He just doesn't have the PR sparkle of Andrew House or the sort of gamer cred of. But actually, I'd argue that that's not the job of the manager. The job of the manager is to look after your teams, make sure they've got everything they need to deliver the things that you want them to deliver, and then let Insomniac and Herman Holst and all those people talk about games and titles. The CEO's job really is to run a business.
I can't, from the track record recently, I can't see it being anything other than a US pick now. It's going to be a Zelnick style guy with a six pack, who's excellent at dropping zingers, during conference calls.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, we'll always remember Jim Ryan from that Gamescom press conference when the camera crash zoomed into him and he could clearly see it on like a monitor or something like that, because he got a big fright and it was in the middle of talking about the PS4.
Was that his first one?
That's the first time I remember seeing him up on stage.
He was given 3 days notice, I think. I can't remember the exact time. It was really short notice that he was having to do that press conference. He's never done anything like that before, right? And he had to stand in front of a huge audience to present PlayStation. And he was not a public speaker, and it was, I'd love it. I didn't know about that camera. That's not come up. Maybe I'll talk to him about it.
You should. It's an iconic moment. Another great journey in the video game industry. Down. Story number 2, this one just happened. Sega has cancelled Hyenas and some other unannounced games in development. Quote, this was on Thursday following a review of the games business. In response to the lower profitability of the European region, we have reviewed the title portfolio of each development base in Europe, and the resulting action will be to cancel Hyenas and some unannounced titles under development. this was surprising because Hyenas has had closed betas. It's had like press events. It seems to be almost there, and they are just cancelling it as it's about to get out the door. Andy, how did this strike you when this dropped about an hour ago?
I wasn't surprised. Again, so I know it sounds like I sound like the big know-it-all. But you know, I've been hearing things about this game for ages. I mean, they've been working on this game for ages, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they lost the creative director. Very recently, they lost an exec producer. It's one of those. I mean, that's not always a red flag, but it's this project, a new project for them with a new team, in a new genre, with high ambition, high expectations. They've been gestating it for ages, trying to work out what it is. I mean, it's undergone big changes. It was like a looter shooter at one point, I think, and then obviously it moved towards like a more Destiny type thing. And I mean, whenever I saw it, I thought it looked great. I thought the art direction was great. I thought the concept was great. I mean, from that point of view, I'm a little bit sad because I was looking forward to it. It's also really sad, obviously, for the team, because when you go and work on kind of game development like I did, it becomes really clear that there's only a handful of people really making the broad creative decisions, and everyone else is it's the worker soldiers, right? And those are the guys who lose out. Lots of people have lost years and years of work now that's basically in the bin, and maybe their jobs, probably for little fault of their own. But coming back to it, yeah, I think they're probably just pulling the Band-Aid off at this point. They've been working on it for ages and ages. Clearly they weren't happy with whatever progress it was making. I mean, it's very, very telling that they had a beta very, very recently, actually, which, you read into that how you want. I mean, they're probably using that as some sort of test bed.
Yeah. I spoke to someone that was told by someone working on the game just this past weekend that, oh yeah, we've got future closed betas planned, we'll get it sorted for codes and stuff like that. Like it seemed to be pretty out of nowhere. Chris, what did this strike you as?
Obviously, the issue with the game, I don't know. I like the look of it. I probably was never going to play it, but I liked what I saw of it. The market's really hard right now for video games. There are obviously these huge, big tentpole titles that are doing ridiculous numbers, but unless you are Harry Potter or Star Wars or Zelda or whatever, it's really difficult launching a new IP in a competitive genre. When the going's good and the pandemic's awful and the industry's growing rapidly, it feels like a great idea. When you've got the situation you've got now, where engagement's dropping, sales are falling for those sort of titles, publishers are inflation's going, causing all costs to go up. Some tough decisions are going to have to be made, and this is happening across the board. You saw what happened to Immortals of Avium. Right? It came out. It's a similar thing in my mind. It's like I thought it looked all right, that game. I don't know if it actually was or not, but it came out and it got to number 83 in the charts. Like it just nobody bought it. It was an EA title. It shouldn't be doing that, but it was. And you've got what happened with the Callisto Protocol, which actually didn't do too badly in context of the market, but wasn't anywhere near what they wanted.
Some of these games make me appreciate more and more how well we actually did with Ukulele. Like, I mean, I remember at the time being a little bit disappointed that we only just sort of like broke the top 20, I think. But then we like sold 1 million, and you look at some of these that would have had much bigger teams, much bigger budgets that are coming in the top 90. Christ.
Yeah, it's tough because gamers are going, we've got less money. We're going to focus in on these big games that are going to take 200 hours to do and that kind of stuff. And it's just hitting. There were exceptions, like loads of exceptions, by the way. It's like they're not always the case that they're struggling, but that this sort of middle market is really under pressure. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'd be interested to know what else they've cancelled from the European regions. That suggests 2 Point Studios maybe, or what's that? The Humankind folks. There are other studios there. It might be some cancellations, and you're seeing layoffs across the board now. Thousands of staff being laid off across companies partly because they overinvested during the pandemic. But
it's every other day now. I'm getting messages saying, "Oh, I hear there's layoffs at this company, layoffs at that company." it's really ridiculous.
We haven't seen a particularly big collapse yet. I guess Volition is probably the biggest. But I think there's probably...
I think there'll be more coming, especially, you hit the nail on the head there, Embracer especially. You know, last I heard for Embracer, you know, everything was up for sale. Yeah. You know, budgets were being frozen, projects are being cancelled. I don't think we've heard the last of that at all.
No.
And it's all, you know, stems from, you know, really greedy capitalism. It was unnecessary situation. Tons of these layoffs are unnecessary. You know, it's the pandemic boost, you know, resetting slightly. But, you know, it's not lower than it was before, but just stupid, short-sighted business planning.
Well,
you know, and again, it's the people's jobs. But I'm going off on one now, but it's people who lose their jobs. They pay for that, right? These idiots in charge of these companies. How can we get the next 12 months up slightly? But this is coming down again. Let's fire all these people, and it'll go up a bit more.
But although I agree with you, it is partly capitalism, right? And this is what I thought was ridiculous. You know, we all knew. I did a piece back at the beginning of the pandemic how things are going well, and how at the end of the pandemic, the objective has to be not to maintain the success we were seeing at the peak of the pandemic, but to try and grow, make sure we're bigger than we were pre-pandemic. And that's I did this piece about it. But there was this reality that if you're owned by shareholders and you've got investors, they want you to make more money each and every year, and you can't tell them that, oh yeah, in 2022 we're gonna see a 10% drop, and in 2023 we're gonna see a 15% drop. You can't say that to investors, and so that's what that causes. People, how are we going to make more money post-pandemic? I know we've got to spend the money now, bring in loads of people to try and grow that way. And when it didn't work, which we all knew it wasn't, they're going to have to lay those people off again, and it's but I just find the fact that we all knew this was going to happen. It's just frustrating. Embrace is a little bit more of a specific situation, because what they were doing was just growing and buying lots of things and incurring more debt and stuff like that. And when the inflation went through the roof, nobody wanted to buy anything anymore, and the debt became worse. And then when they didn't get another from Savvy Group a load of money, they had to they now have to turn themselves into a sustainable business, and that's why.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
we have to do it. What? I thought we were just like doing fantasy business.
Well, something you've got. I think there's like 6 publishers within Embracer Group, right? I find that so you don't need 6 publishers. You sort of and it's as but they kept buying them. You know, it's the same thing with Microsoft in a way, because they when the Activision Blizzard deal goes through, they'll have 3 publishing divisions, and it's you don't need 3. And those things are where and whereas when the going's good and the money's being made, nobody questions it. But when things are tough, they're going, hang on, why do you have 3 publishing divisions? I think 1 will do, right? And that's when the cuts come out, and it's painful. I don't think the games industry is in trouble in any way. It is what we brutally call a correction. But it's definitely a tough time.
Do we worry for Creative Assembly? Their next game is out in about 2 weeks' time. Do you think they'll get by on Total War? It said last August that it was working on a new action game and another unannounced project. Did we presume that those have also been killed, Chris?
I think Total War is a pretty safe bet. I think they've got a successful franchise people like. Whether you get this situation there where they're growing, they've gone right. We've got a hit series. That means that I think the studio is perfectly safe. I think it just means that, but they may have to, if they can't reassign people into other teams or other jobs or spin up another project quickly, they're going to have to, I guess, reduce their headcount. I hope they won't. But
actually, just as I asked this, I've seen on Twitter that members of the Hyenas team are starting to post that they're looking for other opportunities. So it seems that this is the natural, sad next step of this. How much of an impact on Creative Assembly do you think this will have, Andy?
I mean, again, it's speculating is tough, especially when we could find out by the time this podcast goes out what it means. But from my understanding, I always thought that studios like the European studios, the PC specialized studios like Creative Assembly were paying Sega's bills for a long time, right? Football Manager, Sports Interactive, and 2 Point Studios, and all those guys. They are steady, reliable, hit makers in that space. Again, it's super sad and it's frustrating from the capitalism point of view, because you look at all these guys here that are posting they've lost their jobs. The vast majority of them, it's not their bloody fault. This happens because there's a lack of direction, a lack of leadership, and that's not their fault.
No, but sometimes it happens because, and then you've got things like wars in Ukraine and stuff, where it's actually out of everybody's power, and pandemics and all this sort of thing. It's just not to forgive leadership in any way in this sort of situation, but it is a the market's changed, and that wasn't, again, this is the thing, this never used to happen in video games. Video games now got so big that the world affects it. Like 10 years ago, when there was like market, challenges and the market crash and this kind of stuff, video games did fine. It just carried on because it was a small niche by global standards, and was a sustainable audience and did some cool things with families and stuff like that. Now games are so huge that if there's a recession or economic turmoil or high inflation, or we see it and we feel it, and it's just the games industry is no longer immune to these global pressures. And a game like, and that's the problem. You make a game like Hyenas. How long was it in development for? 5-6 years, whatever. So 5-6 years ago, it seemed like a safe bet, and then it just stopped being it. And you get that. I'm sure.
I'm not making this up. I thought it had a load of like Destiny veterans working on it. So you look at it 5-6 years ago, it's like, yeah, that's a banger. We got some Destiny guys working on a Destiny game. And then now
imagine now trying to commission a game where you go, right, what game would you commission now? What is a genre that's underserved or looking like it's up and coming and stuff? And you think, will it still be relevant when you launch?
It's been going on for years. I remember 15 years ago do you remember when every company was making a World of Warcraft?
Yeah.
Like EA made a ton of them.
Or MOBA.
By the time they came out, or MOBA came afterwards, yeah. But by the time these World of Warcraft clones came out, they'd all be shut within like 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Then it was MOBAs, and then it was
Royales,
Destiny loot shooters, and it goes through these things.
Yeah. Strange. Thoughts with everyone affected by these changes. Story number 3. It's a very VGC story. Hideki Kamiya is leaving Platinum Games. Bayonetta and Wonderful 101 director has announced that he'll be leaving the company next month. The company's vice president and co-founder said on social media that he had made the decision after, quote, a lot of consideration based on my own beliefs, and they suggested they will continue to make games. Platinum said, we regret to announce that Hideki Kamiya will be leaving Platinum Games on October 12, 2023. We are truly grateful for his creative ideas, leadership, and contribution to the growth of Platinum Games from our startup to this very day. Andy, what do you think about this?
It's a bit suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah, strange, isn't it?
I've not really got any answers. I mean, I've asked around. It's always difficult to get information on Japanese business dealings because they're very, very hush-hush by their nature. But I mean, there's certain things that I think you can look into as flags. Like he was promoted to vice president just last year. He's very, very clearly, staunchly a game creator. Doesn't want to be a businessman. At the time, he said that wasn't going to affect his position at the company. Hold on a minute. No, sorry. I've just seen this pop up in my feed. Sorry to interrupt this. It says IGN is reporting the entire Hyenas studio now faces redundancies. Massive cuts across the company. That's sad.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyway, sorry. Back to Kamiya. He's obviously, he was working on his third superhero trilogy game, Project GG. That's been going on for a couple of years now. So he's left right at the, conception, pre-production, whatever stage they are of that game. He's left it, which is not usual. He was the most powerful creative person at the company. He's co-founder. And also this coincides with a year ago, they got this new kind of CFO in from Nintendo, Yamane-san. And he's a very no-nonsense business guy. He used to do third-party relations at Nintendo. And from my dealings with them, I mean, also I interview them a couple of times a year. I've been to Platinum twice this year, visited them in person. You could sense the difference. You know, he was very much professionalizing their operation. You've got 5 PRs in the room, talking points, can't talk about this, you know, etc., etc. You know, we're redacting this. And that wasn't the case. They very much felt independent before, which is a good thing for them. Like they've been unprofessional in a lot of other ways that they needed sorting out, like in publishing. They've been trying to self-publish. So, I mean, I've heard lots of different things from people I speak to, but I get the feeling he's quit, yeah. There's a lot of politics in that area of the Japanese games industry. Obviously, they've all left Capcom originally. Capcom's on their doorstep. Their previous CEO left under shady circumstances, allegedly, and has ended up back at Capcom, making some of the Resident Evil remake games with M2, his new studio. There's all lots of politics swooping around there. I would not be surprised if, you know, you read into this, if Kami is not really happy with the direction of the company. It's becoming more professional. This is not why I joined here. It's not fun. You know, I'm now a business guy. There's this other business guy breathing down my neck. I'm going to go and do something else. I mean, there's no shortage of money if you want to start a studio now, especially in Japan. The Saudi money, the Chinese money is he would have. I have heard from people who have had been middlemen who have been messaged saying, "Can you put me in touch? We want to give him some money. We want to make him an offer." But from what I hear, I don't think he has left because of an offer. I think he's just left, which is sad, really. And it presents a massive challenge for Platinum as well, because their entire lineup was built around him. They're making bloody 8-bit style, a whole line of 8-bit arcade games, you know, which is purely him.
Yeah.
You know, they're making more Bayonetta games than ever, you know, spin-offs and stuff like that, which, you know, again is him, this big superhero, you know, trilogy ending game. There's still lots of talented people there, especially, is it Tora-san? I might have got that name wrong. The guy who made Astral Chain. He's seen as the young star. So maybe he'll now step up, but certainly it's a big challenge for Platinum, not just in terms of production, but also how popular he was in the West to Western players.
Do you think there's an issue that should Kamiya start a new studio, those kind of people that are at Platinum that are his kind of foot soldiers, the people that are super influenced by him, will all leave and just go and work with him, like has kind of happened with like the Donnie that was running Yakuza that has left and made his own thing? A lot of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely think that's what could end up happening and will probably end up happening. The other thing you have to say as well is that obviously Shinji Mikami is floating around as well, because he's just quit Tango. Shinji Mikami was Kamiya's boss, was his mentor. They've worked on games. Yeah, Mikami-san co-founded Platinum, I believe. It made Vanquish, and he left quite quickly. But they worked on Resident Evil together. They worked on, I'm sure there's other stuff they worked on that I'm forgetting. So do they end up going and doing something together? There's a NetEase studio that's been one of the many Japanese NetEase studios that's been founded by kind of ex-Resident Evil Devil May Cry guys. Does he go there? He has got all the choices in the world right now, and I think the real loser here is probably Platinum. Well,
he also Kameya's made a lot of Nintendo games as well, and Nintendo are investing a lot in spinning up teams and studios. Maybe even an old traditional one.
Could do.
It might be.
That'd be an interesting clash. But whatever.
I don't think it'd be an internal Nintendo studio.
Yeah.
It's like
more time to block people on Twitter. We need to take a break, but when we come back, we have more news and some Alan Wake 2. And we are back. This next story is a funny one. A statue maker called Gaming Heads is claiming that Sony has told them to destroy all their PlayStation stock. This company, if you're not aware, they made statues for like The Last of Us, Jak 3, God of War, all this stuff. But they published an open letter to Twitter, which not only seems to blame Sony for the decision to destroy the stock, also name checks and gives the contact information of PlayStation Group's commercial partners, which we will omit from this. Quote, "We've worked with Sony PlayStation for more than 10 years to bring you some of the best video game collectibles and been trying hard to get them to change their mind. They know you have paid your hard-earned money for items that are ready to ship to you and that are in production, but unfortunately, after doing all we can, they have told us not to ship your orders to you." This is a quote from Sony, apparently. "Our business priorities remain unchanged." They told pre-order customers to contact Sony for their refunds, not Gaming Heads. And now on the Gaming Heads Facebook page, it's a lot of people saying, "I paid hundreds of pounds for these statues. I would like a refund because you're cancelling them." And Gaming Heads have responded by saying, "It's a shame that Sony has cancelled your statue, so why don't you go and deal with Sony?" Andy, this seems incredibly strange, and surely this falls on the Gaming Heads and not Sony to make up the money for these people.
No, it depends what the contract says, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of these companies are like, it's a bit of the Wild West. I mean, I remember when we were at Playtonic, we did a deal with, I think they were called Triforce. They were like a fairly decent size, like statue, premium statue company. I mean, obviously the main one now is First for Figures. But the other one was I'm sure they were called Triforce. Like they were the two. And we were doing a ukulele statue with them, and we really invested in it. We got like a guy to like one of our modelers to make a model, and we had a minimum order of like something stupid. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Chris is holding it up. I've got it on the desk behind me. He's like bringing out the punchline before I get to it. And they just went missing. They just literally like one day they stopped replying to our emails, and then we found out people weren't in their jobs no more. Where's it? Literally, that was it. We just didn't hear from them again. And then like a couple of years later, I think I was actually at VGC, so it's probably a couple of years later. People reported these statues turning up at like Filipino markets and stuff for like tenner, like finished statues that were going to retail for like probably over £100. So if you go on like Filipino eBay, you can like pick one up. I've got one on the shelf behind me, so Chris has got one as well. Yeah. So, it depends what the contract is. I don't bloody know.
It's so strange. It's also very. I mean, if they wanted any chance of working with Sony ever again, you potentially don't dox a member of Sony's team, Chris.
Yeah, anything I don't know. There's a reason for this, right?
Yeah.
They don't tell you, and so I'm a bit like, well, licensing disagreement of some description, but they're clearly, if they felt they've been wronged, you'd expect them to sort of tell you how they've been wrong. But it is unusual. I mean, the way it normally works is you get the refund from Gaming Heads, and if Gaming Heads genuinely has been let down by its licensing partner, they'd have to probably sue Sony for the money or something. I also find these, and I've got First Figure statues. I've got the Zelda one. I've got a Banjo one, and you spend hundreds of pounds for these. You pre-order these in advance, and they get manufactured, and you get delivered them sometimes years later, and it's and I understand why, because the cost of these are so high. They can't just afford to just manufacture, hope they sell them all. But it's it does create that element of uncertainty, because something could go wrong. And then you've spent the money and it's gone.
It was weird. This is completely based on Twitter chat, but some of the replies were like, "You sold, I think it was like a Tomb Raider figure, and it turned out terribly, and you didn't respond to any emails." So maybe like the actual company's a bit dodge, but that's as we say in our story, we're waiting to hear if PlayStation replies to any of this, or if this is just a licensee being a bit strange. Next story, MetaQuest 3 launches in October 10th. You can get a 128 gig headset for 180 quid, 512 for 620. This is a mixed reality headset as opposed to just a straight up VR of the MetaQuest 2. Chris, what's the VR market like these days? Do you think this will do all right? MetaQuest 2 seemed to do very well. It's my favourite of all of them.
I actually don't know the answer to that question, Jordan. It's because obviously the VR market did quite well during the pandemic. It sort of spiked a little bit. Sony then came back in. There was a lot of excitement around what PSVR 2 could do for the VR market. I don't think it did huge. I don't know where that leaves things. It got to the point where VR games were profitable, but it was felt. I don't know. In a world where people, I don't know. I don't know the answer. You know what? It made me go, you know what? I should probably look into how VR stuff's doing. I can speak to GFK and find out some hardware figures around what's going on there. But you always get like a bit of a boost around Black Friday. They always tend to be like, they tend to like knock £100 off the price of these things around Black Friday, and then they have a little spike around it. But I don't know what's going on with VR. It does feel like there's a lack of. It doesn't feel like PSVR 2 was quite the exciting boost everyone was hoping it would be.
No.
And we've not really had.
Sony barely mentions it. You never like PlayStation VR is like.
I mean, I called it at the time, didn't I? It was absolutely right. I'm going to blow my own trumpet right now.
Go on.
PlayStation VR is not a PlayStation initiative; it's a Sony initiative.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, this thing might blow up. We should probably make a VR headset. Well, there's some synergy with games there. Should put PlayStation on it. PlayStation never seemed like they gave a shit about that product at all. It's a Sony initiative. It's a lovely piece of hardware.
It is really, really nice hardware, but yeah, I think that Horizon game will be the biggest thing that ever comes for it. During Meta Connect, which I'm sure we were all thrilled to attend.
Hold me back.
Yeah. The JaackMaate announced that Roblox optimized for VR is launching in Quest, which seems like a no-brainer because Roblox is bigger than the games industry. Xbox Cloud Gaming is also coming to MetaQuest 3, and they have a service which is £8 a month that you can get VR games kind of monthly. I found that for VR stuff, it suffered a bit of the mobile game situation where like people weren't super thrilled to pay full game prices for VR experiences, which was it also reminded me of Stadia when people would get VR headsets and talk to me. They'd be like, "Oh, I want to try out Beat Saber. I want to try out all these other things." And it's like, "Yeah, well, it's full price games." Do you get the impression that software sells well on VR, Chris, or is the attach rate pretty low?
I think if you bought yourself an expensive VR headset, you're probably buying the games. Yeah, I have to say though, what I will say, I quite like. I went to a video games event recently that was really quiet. Like there wasn't a lot going on. There was very few gamers there at all. The most popular booth I seem to think was the C Smash booth, which is a PSVR game, and it just always had to have somebody playing, and it looked like an awful lot of fun. But I find that stuff's really quite. I would queue up if I'm at an event and it's a big VR thing, and you've got like it's all set up in a brilliantly perfect environment, and I'm given a bat and a thing. I think, I'll have a go on that. That for me is a decent VR experience. I've been to a Star Wars event and I had a Star Wars experience. I went to a room and it was like, this is really nice. I kind of lose the appetite when I have to set it up myself in my room, and because ultimately I'm playing them 15 minutes and then I'm probably putting them down again. I tried to do Gran Turismo recently in VR, and I sort of said, yeah, I'm going to go back to the TV and controller. But that's me. I'm just. I don't think I'm the right audience for it. But I do feel like VR's a thing. I'm just not entirely convinced it's ever going to be particularly substantial. But it needs something to ignite people and go, oh, we've got to get one now. And I don't know what that thing is.
Yeah, I thought C Smash was brilliant. I think there's loads of good games in that kind of tier. But yeah, it's the big stuff that kind of sells the platforms that isn't quite there. Let's skip this final story because we're running long this week and go straight into games. Last week Andy revealed that he'd been jet setting off to LA to catch COVID, and while he wasn't catching COVID, he was playing a bit of Alan Wake 2. Andy, tell us all about it because this looks like a banger.
Yeah, it's I think it's going to be, or it could be, a real sleeper hit, this game. I mean, you know, everyone knows that Remedy always kind of deliver within their genre. They're really good at what they do, making these kind of cinematic, character-led single-player games. And this, like, it feels like the ultimate, the most Remedy game they've done. I mean, I got to spend some time with Sam Lake, and I asked him this, like, because it's they're like an enigma, right? So you're a publicly listed independent developer who's been around for 30 years, you make, critically acclaimed but not commercially hugely successful, like narrative thrillers, and you're still doing it, and they're still really good at it. And it feels like this game feels like the ultimate version of the games they were making 20 years ago. They're not, okay, yeah, he did point out, look, we do actually have some multiplayer stuff gestating in the background. They've been kind of gestating a multiplayer project for ages. But it's great. It will live and die on its key mechanics. It's quite ambitious. Their whole thing with this game is that they want to make the narrative more involved with the gameplay. The original game, and this is really depressing, that I went back and found my original Alan Wake review from 13 years ago. Even more depressing is when you laugh at your own 13-year-old jokes. And that's what I remember of that game, is that, and a lot of games of that era, like Gears of War was like this as well, and probably every AAA kind of narrative game of that era was you get some story, then murder, then some more story, then more murder. It was like shooting gallery was the only thing that they knew how to involve the player and padding out the story. And Remedy are very aware of that. And that was their big thing here, is okay, so they kind of they've hit two birds with one stone with the dual character setup. So Alan Wake is stuck in this nightmare world called the Dark Place, where he's ideas manifest in reality and stuff. But more interesting to me was that the other character, Saga, who is an FBI agent investigating a murder in the real world, Pacific Northwest, Twin Peaks style. And if the first game was inspired by Twin Peaks, this is very much inspired by True Detective. It's like a grisly, Resident Evil-esque, forest landscape with murder and cults, and so what they've done is they've added this mechanic called the Mind Place, where you can pause the game at any point. You don't actually pause it. They stress that you can die, but you can go into your head, and then you're in this mock FBI office where there's a case board and a profile desk, and you can profile characters that you've met in the games, find out more about them. And the case board is this physical manifestation of the plot, of the investigation. So she'll have photographs and notes in her possession, it'll come up down the bottom of things that you found out, there's a locked safe. Oh, this guy said that the key for the trailer park is over here. Oh, the key box is locked, but I found a note saying someone used a screwdriver. And you can place them on the board, and Saga will make her own connections between them, and explain her point of view. So it's you feel like you're physically involved in solving the plot, even though it's quite handholdy. They told me that it was a nightmare trying to balance that thing, and I'll say from my point of view, it wasn't a demo. They dropped us in the middle of the game. So for most of it, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I was just spamming X on this thing, didn't have a clue. And then, but the really pleasing thing is how they mirror that with Alan, because the theme of the game is duality. So on Alan's side, instead of a mind place, he's got a writer's room. So it's all similar mechanics, except he's manipulating reality with his one. So he's got a plot board, and he'll put down plot points, and it will change the world. So you're investigating a murder in a hotel, a cult ritual, and you can go to specific rooms like the ballroom, and you can manipulate them to the pre-show, and it will almost change back time to that point in the story, or you can change to nightmare, and then everything will go mental, and there's all monsters in there and stuff. It's quite a cool demonstration of the SSD movement, where you can just change the rooms you're in, manipulate them, on the spot. So I think the game will live or die based on whether that pays off, because again, it was difficult to get a grasp of it, because they dropped me right in the middle of the game, and it could be quite trial and error. at that point because I hadn't been onboarded, I hadn't done a tutorial. A lot of the case board, it was like, I don't know what the hell's going on. It's very hands off. Like it's the anti like Sony AAA game where you wait 60 seconds and some geezer's telling you where to go, right? It won't. Like the developers watched in pain. Well, I just wandered round for 20 minutes trying to work out what the bloody hell to do before they just told me. But I think with onboarding, like the case board is supposed to solve that. Like if you don't know where to go, you go and put it on board, and then you kind of work it out. It'll live or die whether they manage to really execute on that in the full game, because it's either going to be like really refreshing, kind of narrative shooter, or it's going to be a bit flawed. But either way, 7 out of 10s are great, right?
Yeah, I think that footage looked fantastic. Like I love Control, I love Alan Wake, and the mix between the kind of live action stuff and the actual like renders and stuff like that all looks brilliant. What I was surprised with was a couple of times in the footage you sent me, you died because you're terrible at games, and there was a flash, like it's all like.
Oh yeah, there's some really cheap asshole jump scares.
The one I'm talking about, I'm not going to spoil, but it was like something out of Live Leak. Like it was just a few frames that I had to slow down in Premiere Pro, but I was like, okay, they're actually going pretty.
Is this the lake? Was this in the lake?
No, this was just, I think it was in that hotel section. Like when you die in that game, it goes like, wah, and shows you a load of creepy shit, and then says like, oh, the story didn't go that way. Play it again, Andy. Stop being shit at games. And in that, I slowed it down, and I was like, fucking hell, this looks crazy. It's a beautiful looking game. Was that PC you were playing?
Yeah, we're playing on PC.
Yeah, that would be one.
It's a properly gorgeous game. Yeah, it's really, really pretty. I saw some people whinging that it's 30 frames per second, but it's not fucking Devil May Cry. It's literally the slowest paced game you can imagine. If any game suits 30 frames, it's this.
Yeah.
I love Alan Wake, and Alan Wake. I recently did Alan Wake Remastered, and I loved it so much. But I did the remastered version, and you're right. Like it's like really good. Oh, now you're going to walk through the woods for an hour and shoot things. And I went, that's okay. And the thing is, it's probably because I was, and obviously I know that that's not what they're doing this time, and it's actually one of my most. I'm really, really excited for it, and I kind of love the fact that the first game had a bit of a nightmare development, and then couldn't get the sequel off the ground at all, and they just really persisted. Like we want to do this. We want to bring back Alan Wake, and they managed to make it happen. And I want it to do well. It's coming out in a really tough window. It's not got a physical version, so it won't be able to benefit from like the Black Friday boost that you get around.
For everyone whinging about that, by the way, they're really not lying about the digital thing where they said it'll help them kind of get it out quicker. They're still working on the game now, to my knowledge. Like Sam Lake was telling me, the game's out in, I want to say 3 weeks.
Yep.
So I saw it just over a week ago, and they're still working on it. They're fixing bugs and stuff like that, which obviously not having. You could do a day one patch and stuff, but it's just one layer of cert less.
But you have to do a day one patch. You still need to have a basic working game, right? If you need to develop, you need to have had the pipeline, so the game is basically done.
Yeah, the game. I mean, obviously, I played the final game, and it was it's solid, but there was noticeable glitches and issues and stuff. I think it's quite clear that it's coming in. Do you know what? Every game this year is coming in hot. That's the post-pandemic remote working life. Every game this year is coming in hot.
I'm really, really can't wait for it. I think it looks fantastic.
You sound like it, mate. You sound overjoyed.
No, I genuinely like. I'm sitting there going, "Oh, it's Spider-Man and Mario and so."
Yeah, I think it's be properly brilliant. Like, even if it doesn't quite now, it's some of its mechanics, or it's got some bugs or whatever. It's going to be, at the very least, it's going to be a really fucking memorable, interesting game.
I love the fact that it's a little bit like, because you mentioned Twin Peaks. Like the first Twin Peaks was kind of a bit folksy and not too violent.
I think it's been played out as well. Like, do we need more fucking Twin Peaks stuff?
But Twin Peaks: The Return was dark and violent, And it was also had the main character who'd been disappeared for many, many years and suddenly reappeared in the world again. And I just feel, you mentioned True Detective, maybe it is that, but it gave me a Twin Peaks The Return vibe. Well, from what I've seen of it so far. But
I love how there's the point of it. They've just basically gone fuck it and gone, yeah, next to like the town in the original game, Bright Falls, there's another town that's basically full of Finnish immigrants, just so they can put tons of like Finnish people in there. It's like the janitor from Control singing karaoke and just lots of crazy Finnish stuff.
That guy's voice is amazing. It sets the tone so well.
I was big, like when I was there on this trip. It was in LA. I was with the kind of the dev team at dinner, and I was like begging, going, can I speak to the janitor? Like, is he here?
Yeah, I hope it does really well. I'd love a Control 2. There's so much kind of. I mean, obviously they're doing that Max Payne thing that you tried to get something out of them very briefly. Do you think they use Sam Lake for Max Payne, Andy? I know they said no comment, but do you think they do it?
I think the fact that you said no comment suggests something, right? Because I thought they didn't really want me to ask that question, but I snuck it in. It was one of those going, I want to ask one more. Tell me about Max Payne. You know, sounds really significant. Because I think people have underplayed that. Because they're weird. They just snuck it out in a press release. And again, maybe it was a hiring thing, whatever. And they were like, yeah, we're remaking the first 2 games in one package. And it's like, but the way that he spoke about it was like, no, we're combining the 2 games, like into one big, like into a new game. Basically, he said it's all going to be brought up to they need to remake that, like remake a whole fucking new game. Basically, by the sound of it, everything needs to come up to modern standards. It's going to be Northlight Engine.
Remedy don't do stuff where it's just like, yeah, we're going to do something nice and simple like we did last time. They do things like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a video game. And
especially because Rockstar are funding it as well. Like the fact that Rockstar are involved, that raises the bar again. Well, apart from, other than their shit remasters they've done recently. But yeah, you're right. I don't know. But it's gonna look even more weird, isn't it? If there's like just a big Sam Lake like farting face in 4K.
I mean, he's kind of dressed like Max Payne. And a lot of the
he's in every fucking stuff. Remedy game, right? He's in every Remedy game. He's in this one heavily. I think I got about 20 minutes of Sam Lake just playing this for a couple of hours. So yeah, I mean, you have to think he's going to be in there, right?
He's coming to EGX, by the way, if anyone wants to come and meet him and hear a wonderful panel hosted by an incredible host.
Who would that be?
That's just a guy called Driss Kring.
Oh.
He's that's on the I'm looking forward to him coming over.
Think you can sneak me into EGX, Chris? Do you know people?
Yeah, you know what? I think you can come.
Yeah,
I think I can sort that out for you.
Yeah, it's just a shame that to get to London from Glasgow, because the trains are fucked, it's about £6 billion. But other than that, I miss when it was in Birmingham, because the NEC had loads of wee shops around it. I met Shuhei Yoshida and an RS McCall's at the NEC. It's full of beautiful memories.
Amazing. The fun thing with the Birmingham NEC is before they've now got the Elizabeth line, because London XL is actually a pain to get to. It's a lot easier now.
Pokemon Worlds was there and it was a pain in the hole.
I love how everyone in the games industry whinges when they have to go like east. I've had to go west for my entire life. It's like, this is brilliant, really easy to get to. This is like Kensington.
If you know,
as soon as you have to go to like a major convention centre next to a major airport, like slightly East London, move somewhere proper.
What I was going to say is that if you flew into Heathrow to go to EGX, not now,
you'd be flying into the wrong airport. It's literally next to City. If you flew into Birmingham, you'd be like going a long way as well.
Well, Jordan, my commercial manager's from Glasgow as well, so you wanted you to sort of do have a little road trip to EGX, and
I know your commercial manager.
Yeah.
I certainly do. I'm just gonna. That's fine. So I can expense it to GI then. That's what you're saying.
So that is tradition. That is what we do.
That's what you do for dinners.
Okie doke. I was going to talk more about EAFC, but honestly, I've been so pish at it this week that I just don't want to speak about it. It's really depressing because it's still not out. This has been the week of early access, so only the people that paid top dollar for it are playing it, and the amount of professional players I've matched up against, it's really, really harrowing. But if you'd like to send any questions about how shit I am at EAFC, or what kind of things that Chris will happily expense for you, you can do so to podcast@videogameschronicle.com. Thank you for listening. Thanks, as always, to Grant Kirkhope for the VGC podcast theme. Follow myself on Twitter at Jordan Midler, Andy at Andy_VGC, which is still wrong, and Chris at Chris_Dring. Hopefully the rest of the day will be pretty quiet. You get much on today, Chris?
I do. I've got a FIFA interview, actually, I need to transcribe and get out. And
FIFA or EAFC?
EAFC. Well, it's actually about the transition from one to the other. It's about the brand. It's a very business article. It's about how they've approached rebranding it.
Can you ask them why they've done absolutely fuck all for this entry? Anyway, Andy, you get much on today?
I'm going to put some footage of Mario Wonder footage up, actually. I was playing that yesterday. So I'm allowed to put some quantum of footage on the internet, apparently.
You can put who does the voice? Do you know? Is it obvious?
I was asking yesterday, going like, surely the first thing you've done is gone to the credit share. Everyone was playing dumb. No, no idea.
Yeah, of course.
Can't wait to see that leak on a Discord server anonymously during the review period.
Actually, Lawrence Fox, quite a change. Say goodbye, Andy.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye, Chris.
Goodbye.
I will see you next week.